Now that we saw the pros and cons of MATLAB, now let us look at the pros and cons of OpenCV for C++. So why should you use OpenCV for C++ for computer vision? So the number one pro is that it is free. Large parts of OpenCV for C++ are free. That is free as in free speech. You can use OpenCV for C++ freely in your commercial application, and you can also view the source and fix issues if needed. You do not have to open source your project if you use OpenCV for C++. The second pro of OpenCV for C++ is that it has a huge optimized library. The collection of algorithms available in OpenCV for C++ dwarfs everything out there. The library is also optimized for performance. With OpenCV 3, you can use the transparent API to easily use OpenCL compliant devices, that is, GPUs on your machine. Many algorithms also have a CUDA implementation. This allows you to use the GPU in your machine to have fast compute. The third pro is the platforms and devices. You can obviously use OpenCV in your desktop app or as the backend of your web application. Because of its focus on performance, OpenCV for C++ is the vision library of choice in many embedded vision applications and mobile apps. The fourth pro is the big community. There is a big community of developers, 47,000, that use and support OpenCV. It has been downloaded more than 9 million times. Unlike the MATLAB community that consists of researchers, the OpenCV community is a mix of people from many fields and industries. The OpenCV development is funded by companies like Intel, AMD and Google. Needless to say, this video is part of this vibrant community of people who are trying to help each other out. But regarding all of these pros, there are also some of the cons of using OpenCV for C++. So the number one con for OpenCV for C++ is that it is very difficult for beginners. If you do not already have considerable programming experience in C++, using the OpenCV C++ will be very daunting and very scary. You are probably better off trying to use Python instead of C++. The second con is that it has very weak documentation. OpenCV for C++ documentation is bad. Sometimes you need to have a good understanding of the algorithm and actually read the paper, because the documentation does not always explain what the parameters mean and how they affect the outcome. The documentation does not always come with sample code, and that makes it harder to understand. The sample code that comes with OpenCV, though very useful, is also not very well documented either. Let's just say that this is still a work in progress and people are chipping in to make it better. The next con is that it is a very small machine learning library. A computer vision engineer frequently needs many machine learning routines. OpenCV has a small set of machine learning algorithms compared to the choices available when you are using Python for OpenCV. The next con is the visualization and debugging. The debugging and visualizing is hard in any C++ environment. This is especially true if you are coming up with a new algorithm from scratch. Occasionally, people dump data to disk and analyze it using MATLAB, because the visualization and debugging support in C++ is very less. So these are some of the cons of using C++. Although these cons might seem very big and that you will never use C++, but the pros outweighs the cons once you go to higher level. Once you are familiar with OpenCV and you want to deploy it in a commercial project, latency and optimization becomes very important rather than visualization and debugging and documentation. So in those scenarios, you will obviously opt for C++ because you will need a very fast and optimized library for implementing your computer vision algorithms. Therefore, even though right now C++ might not seem like a good candidate for us, we will be using C++ later once all of us become familiar with OpenCV and we have no issues with OpenCV's internal algorithms, and the only issue becomes C++.